Okay, part two of our series. The last time we dealt with the larger foundations, and we felt like we were going over time, so we stopped. And now we'll do the second part of that, which is the church administered foundations. But just to backtrack for just a bit, I was asked, for example, what's some of the examples of some of these larger foundations would be. And you'll certainly see that in the book. But there's some of them that we already mentioned. Those that give to Catholic causes would be, for example, like the Lilly Foundation does that. The Hilton Foundation is another one that does that. GHR Foundation, another large foundation that does that. Cross Catholic Outreach. Those are just a few examples of some of these larger foundations that seem to meet most of the criteria. Porticus, which I did mention, would certainly fit into that as well. So just a few names to give you a flavor for what I'm talking about. Now let's move on to the church administered foundations. And what I mean by church administered is that there's going to be some clergy or somebody specifically part of the institutional Catholic Church that is involved in the grant process, either receiving the application, writing the rules for it, administering it, approving it. So here I'm talking about things like Caritas, Catholic Relief Services. Those two work together, as you know. A variety of archdioceses. For example, in Europe, some archdioceses over there are very significant. Propagation of the Faith, otherwise known as Propaganda Fide, and then the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. They have various committees that act like foundations. The Papal Foundation itself, which is administered out of the Vatican, but was actually started by a number of wealthy Americans. But it is, at this point, definitely influenced by the church in its process. So what do I mean by some of these? First of all, the applicant's first priority for any of you looking for a church administered, 100%, make sure you have the support of your local bishop. Oftentimes, it's a little less true with Caritas and CRS, but certainly with all of these, you're going to need the approval of your local, what's called a local ordinary, which would be your bishop or archbishop. In the case of the Papal Foundation, it isn't just the local bishop, it will also be the papal nuncio that serves your area as well. But support of your bishop, very important. That would be number one. I would characterize all of these as well-developed. By that, I mean that they've been operating for decades, if not hundreds of years. Well-developed, well-intentioned, and welcoming. They want to give money away. They really, and they feel like this is part of their duty and obligation, which is slightly different, for example, than an individual that might set up a foundation but wants to be a little bit careful about how that's managed. They give both small and large projects. So you can find people in here that will address small needs and large needs. For example, when the earthquake hit Haiti about 10 years ago, the two largest funders were the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, together with CRS, but also the Archdiocese of Cologne, Germany. So they can be very significant players in this. There's often a high approval rate too. Many of these give away many more grants and perhaps at a smaller size. You'll see that with the U.S. Bishops' committees for Latin America, for Central or Eastern Europe. At the same time, I think it's either the Archdiocese of Cologne or another has about an 80% success rate. So almost everybody that applies, or a good number of those who apply, get approved. So you get a high approval rate, which should encourage you. They're mostly project-centered, which is also good news. You find out what it is they're looking for. Except CRS and Caritas, they bring their own priorities into a particular country where they're going. So there will be the need to dialogue with their in-country representatives. And you'll find that both for Caritas and for CRS. And then finally, funding amounts can fluctuate. Whereas a foundation will be guided by what's called the prudent investor rule, which means they give away not to exceed 5%, because sometimes their investments go higher than 5%, sometimes they go down. Many of these are funded through collections from the people in the pew. So there have been times, for example, when collections have gone down during various scandals in the church, during times of financial crisis. The collections have gone down, and the amount that they've been able to give has at times gone down. So anyway, those are our church administered. Pay attention to that. Again, don't forget number 1. And we will see you again next week, where we will be talking about government and also mega foundations. Thank you.